Hello and welcome to today's Rocksmith developer stream. I'm your host and the community developer for Rocksmith, Doug Lilly. Very happy to be here with you today. If this is the first time joining us, welcome. It took you long enough, but I'm not complaining. I'm glad to have you here. What we're gonna do, we're gonna talk to some people from the staff. Today we're gonna talk about live shows, kind of how to get there, what to do in your first live show, the questions around that. Which I know it's a funny time to talk about that, but it's a good time to prep, maybe to think about that if you've got a group that's going to be playing live in the future, or that's playing now if you're in an area that is allowing for live music. Other than that, we have Audrey and Kate who have sent in some performances. We're going to watch those later, as well as a special segment from Andrew Levin. So again, welcome to the Rocksmith Developer Stream. And now let's say hello to our first and only live guests of the day. Today we have Rye Kin, and we have transcriptionist back Shane Gann. Long time never see.
Welcome
Long
back,
time no
dude.
see. Long time no see for the stream. Long time never see for me, I guess.
Yeah, we've never had a chat
Yeah.
on screen or in person on the stream.
This will be nice. We'll I think this will be fun. We want to talk about some live music. But before we get to that, let's talk about why we have the two of you here talking about that. Raikin, you've played live music before. Is that correct?
Yeah, lots of times.
That's safe to say.
Anytime.
If you don't mind, give us a real quick rundown of who you've played live with, and sort of the scope of shows that you've done.
I mean, I played in lots of different original bands that never went anywhere, like back in the day. I guess the biggest thing would be Greg Kinn Band with my dad, just like touring, and also just like one-off fly dates and stuff.
Sure.
So a good amount of traveling. Not quite so much nowadays, but because he's a little bit older, not just because of our situation now, but I'd say like, yeah, we used to play a lot like in the Bay Area. We'd have a lot of super high profile shows. We'd be opening up for like The Who, Boston. All the classic rock bands that came to town would play at the Kinsert at the Shoreline Amphitheater, which was his, because he had a radio, like a top morning show in the Bay Area as a DJ, and so there's like a lot of promotional stuff going on. It was a pretty cool time.
That's fun. That sounds really fun.
Yeah. It was that. I mean, those were some of the funnest shows. Plus, just playing with your dad is a great feeling. It's just like I feel totally at home there. It's like I had some pretty great times doing that. And I don't know, like nobody, not like I could say I played with like a platinum selling band or made on a good tour, just a lot of like small things and filling in for people. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, cool. And Shane Gann, it felt like you were on tour for years. I don't know if you were on tour for the entire time that you weren't here, but it seemed that way. So yeah, tell us a bit about what your sort of experience and why we're going to talk about live music performing with you today.
My live music debut was in high school, like many band members, and I got a little bit familiar with shows at that point. But I would say that as far as being a professional and doing shows that are worth putting me in front of the camera today, I started about 10 years ago with my band Hail the Sun, and we started booking our own shows in college and just grinding it out for year after year. And like you said, spending a lot of that time on the road. And here we are 10 years later, still a band.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for being here on the stream with us again today. And if you in the chat, if you have any questions for us, make sure you reach out to UB Jurassic. That is Brian Turner. He is the community manager based in North Carolina. He'll get those questions over to us, so we can ask Shane and Rye about playing live or whatever else you want to ask about. Honestly, if you have some technique questions, we're up for answering those as well. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, hypothetically, you've been playing music with a group of people for a while. You've got some songs down, or you've been playing solo, but you've got your songs down, and you feel like you're ready to play out, to play live in front of people. First off, how do you know? How do you think you know when you're ready to perform before an audience?
I'll jump right in and
Yeah,
say
go.
you really, I mean, if you feel confident, you never really are going to know. You just got to take the first step, and then you gauge it on the reaction. Like you might find out pretty quick if you're, and it's a comfort level too. If you've never done it before, just getting in front of people, and like if it's just you singing and playing guitar, maybe you need experience like talking on the mic, addressing, trying to communicate with people in the room, telling funny one-liners in between the songs, if that's your thing, or just also playing and singing at the same time and feeling comfortable with that in front of people in a room with different variables, so you're not just in your bedroom practicing. And I'd say the sooner the better. I mean, if you don't mind embarrassing yourself, go for it. Not that you would embarrass yourself, but it's been known to happen. It's definitely happened to me. But yeah.
And
Yeah, I
actually,
totally agree. As far as not, I think you're probably ready once you guys all know the song. At that point, all the other things that Rye just mentioned, playing in front of people and remembering that you also have to sing your parts, and there's no forgiving nature in any way. That's all something you have to get used to by doing it.
yeah, I guess once you have the songs down, any further practice on those songs isn't necessarily going to get you better playing live,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like it's not going to prepare you
So
anymore for.
yeah, so worth putting time into your technique and making sure that you're playing those parts as perfectly as possible. But the actual aspect of playing a live show, there's things you can't practice. Things like
Right.
Stage presence, and like what Rye's talking about. There's that comfort level that people usually don't have it the first show, and
Sure.
you'll see it happen over a good amount of time. It takes a while to develop your sort of comfort on stage.
hmm And so if you're ready to play live, you've got your songs, you're dedicated, you and your band, or just you and your guitar. Uh, what are your options to play live? If you've never played live before and nobody else in your
Yeah.
band has done this, what are some of the first things you can do to get yourself in front of people?
Even as far as like looking for opportunities to play.
Yes.
I'd say good, like look for open mic nights, and depending if you're like a rock band with a drummer, with a full band, maybe a coffee shop's a little small for that. But I mean, I know a lot of coffee shops right in the neighborhood here that do have open mics for like singer-songwriter types, and that's a great way to break the ice there. On top of that, depending on what it is that you do, you could look at some restaurants that have little band combos, and obviously look for your smaller clubs and bars in the neighborhood or in your town, and target that. I think that's probably the primary best way to do it for like a rock band. On top of that, actually another one is parties. Like if you're in high school, like I remember playing keg parties all the time, and that was like a great way to like refine everything. It's not super high pressure, and also build a following that way too.
Cool.
Yeah, the only
Shay.
one I didn't hear mentioned, like a battle of the bands, if anything comes up like that,
Yeah.
or bouncing off of what Rai was saying about like just finding small clubs and things that do shows. I know it's not ideal, but sometimes they'll put together just bands because all the bands want to play and the venue
Yeah.
wants to take advantage of the event. And you may have to, sell tickets for the venue because you don't really have a following that they can go off of. But things like that are great ways to not only get in the door as far as playing a live show, but also becoming familiar with communicating with other bands and building relationships that way, or just becoming a little more understanding of like venue staff and
Yeah.
the ways to interact with people.
Well, that's a great transition to my next question. Let's say you've gotten your gig or your show performance. It's set up. You've got your songs down. What else? What do you need to know? What extra gear might you need that you didn't need when you were just practicing at home? And what about the venue's needs?
Again, it depends on where your first gigs are at. Like, I mean, obviously you got to think about, a small club like, like a club is probably most likely going to have a PA with mics and mic stands and everything like that. But you got to make sure you remember that like a lot of bars don't have that, and coffee shops don't have that. So you definitely need to bring a PA basically if the venue doesn't supply one. That's
So at
always
least
like a
ask.
good first question to ask. Yeah, because it's an important one. Like some bands don't even own a PA.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
I would add that if you do need a PA, sometimes you can get away with just a powered like wedge monitor.
Mhm.
So you don't need like a full PA. I guess you'd have to ask yourself, do you want to have drums in, do you want to like mic all the drums? Because that's like a whole nother level of PA that you would need more
Yeah.
power. And
If you're
that's,
doing your own sound, you're going to need to know how to mic those if they're being
oh yeah,
mic'd.
sure. But hopefully if you're playing in a little club, they the sound guy is going to handle all that at your sound check.
Yeah, I
Anything to
would
add?
say, as far aside from the PA, which I think is something definitely worth considering, because yeah, again, you kind of don't know until you get there, and it's better to have that equipment if you can afford to.
Mhm.
But as far as maybe a little more individualistically, if that's a word,
Yeah.
I would say like make sure you have extras of everything you use: cables, picks,
Yeah.
even a guitar. Bring a backup. You really never know. You're gonna break a string during that song during your 20-minute set. If it's something like one of your first shows, you're probably not gonna have that long. If you have to
Mhm.
spend a lot of time changing that string, or just out of the picture for any reason,
Yeah.
it's just gonna bum you out about the experience. So
Cool.
just be prepared.
And
Hey, if I could piggyback on that really quick. Also,
please
I
do.
just thought it's very important to bring a backup guitar if you have one,
Yeah.
because especially if you're playing a live set, you don't have time to stop the song and tune the guitar. Half your set's going to be gone, and sound guy's going to be like, "All right, 5 minutes, you're done. Get out of here."
Exactly.
But yeah, it's great to have a backup guitar, and I've worked with a lot of bass players that just bring one bass. A bass is less apt to break strings, but I have better peace of mind just having two guitars all tuned up. They all have to be tuned up. If your second guitar is out of tune, it's worthless, right? You have to make sure they're tuned and ready to go, and they both work. So test them both out at sound check. Also, I just thought of this. It's kind of hip to if your band has like a banner or something with the name.
Yeah.
Is that still going on, or was that like an
No,
80s?
I think people still have banners. Yeah.
Maybe not for your very first show, but like once you guys get going, it's kind of like if you have your logo and stuff, you can have little branding there too. So
Yeah, anything visual is a good idea. I know we used to see a lot of bands just kind of come up with these PVC structures that would just have like a vinyl,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
poster or whatever, just fill it, and they'd throw them in front of the amps, and the sound would travel through it, but the aesthetic would be, oh, okay, I see that this band has this kind of vibe.
And hopefully get that name to stick in your head so that if you're playing in the area again later, like, I saw them.
Exactly.
They were dope. I'm going to go see them again. Now, this is, I don't know if this is a question that comes up very often, but it's one that I'm frequently concerned with. Etiquette. Are there any key points that you would recommend keeping in mind when dealing with a venue, when dealing with other bands, when dealing with the sound person, when dealing with fans or listeners? We'll say it might be too early to call them fans at this point, but when you're dealing with the audience, are there any sort of etiquette things to keep in mind?
I would say number one to me is I tend to sort of treat it like you're the event owner. You're throwing that party that night. You want to make sure that everyone, as far as like, especially for the crowd and things like that, if you happen to interact with anybody, you have to be so warm and like they're spending their night with you. They came to that show to see you probably, and that's so that sort of mindset, that hosting mindset, I think really helps you kind of put on etiquette right away.
Yeah.
And definitely as far as venue staff, and I would say the number one rule is don't go over your set.
yes, exactly.
Like, you stick to the schedule. Like even if you have a 25-minute set and you have five-minute songs and you're like, we can do it. Don't do that. Don't risk that. Especially if you break a string or something else.
Yep.
And just be super kind to all the staff and try and stay out of the way as best as possible. I think is a huge one.
Right.
Yeah, everything that Shane said, you know, just basically go in there, be humble, don't act like a rock star, don't mouth off to anybody, obviously, because you'll never go back to that place again. The obviously the owner or whatever took a chance on you for whatever reason. They're expecting you to hopefully have a little bit of a draw, you know. Don't be mean. Um, and I'll say this too. One of the worst things that kills it, like for a band, if they also go over on the sound check, because every band has an X amount of time allocated for a sound check, you know, before the doors and everything. So I've seen bands just like start rehearsing their songs during the sound check, and you have every other band is sitting there with their arms crossed, like just you know, just giving you the stink eye. So that's a good way to get off on the wrong foot, is like right off the bat before you even start playing. If you're greedy on the sound check time, you know, you're gonna.
Have either of you ever had a sound person cut you off mid-set because you've gone over? Well, not mid-set, but when your set was supposed to end.
Not for me, but you are going to hear about it like right after you get off they'll just chew you out, and then all the other bands will hate you, and the guy will be, hey man, you just blew my whole timeline, because you're probably in there with 2 or 3 other bands, if not more. They have to stick to the schedule, and it's like, you might not think 3 minutes is a lot of time, but then if you take 3 extra minutes, and then there's like, you know, maybe 5 minutes over, the next band's late getting on, and 3 minutes, all of a sudden they're like 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes behind on the whole night. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
And
agree.
When and this is, I assume there's a balance, at least when you're first starting out, as far as getting paid. And I'm not going to say that getting paid is or isn't a reason that you would want to play music or that you'd want to play music live. But when might you expect to start actually being compensated for your time without being exploited? Because I know that can happen.
If you're making the club money and you're bringing in lots of people, and your people are like buying drinks and stuff, I think, you know, it's appropriate to you know, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to, I mean, you don't really have any grounds to stand on. I mean, when I first started out, I would pay to play, like we would, exactly what Shane said, sell tickets. And that's kind of, it's not uncommon. And that's a way for the club to kind of ensure that the band's just not going to suck the time and money. And it's also like it separates like who's serious about doing the gig. Because you got to look at it from the club owner's standpoint. They don't care so much how awesome you are or you think you are. They just want people to come in and buy tickets and buy drinks if it's over 21.
I guess if your band is garbage, but people are coming in to see them anyway and buying drinks, the club owner's probably happy, right?
Well, happy as long as they're not place trashed. Yeah.
Good point. Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess just to piggyback a little bit,
Sure.
I think there is a certain amount of time, like Rye was saying, you have to build up a following, not only so that you have fans at your shows, but and to show the club owners, but also all of that. Hopefully, the more people you have there, even if you're not getting compensated from the venue itself, you're hopefully selling more T-shirts and CDs and stuff.
Yeah,
which is definitely such an important role. I know, especially these days, touring is a mass. I mean, not these actual days.
Yeah.
In general, touring is where a lot of acts make the bulk of their money, and it comes from merch sales. We are glorified T-shirt sellers a lot of the times, but it's for that reason. We build these communities, or for one night, all those like-minded people get to go celebrate that event and commemorate it with a memorabilia piece of their choosing, or hopefully all the options that we have here.
Like both CDs, 3 of those T-shirts.
Exactly.
The stickers, give me that pack of stickers.
It all plays in to it definitely, like Ryan was saying, how the club owner is going to see the whole thing at the end of the day too.
I assume this is, you know what? Actually, we'll get back to that question a little bit later. Right now, I want to go ahead and we're going to take our first break and listen to a performance from Audrey and Kate. But first, we'll we'll say farewell for now to Bri and Shane. Um, bye. And they'll be back.
Adios.
They'll be back later on the show. But right now, we're going to give away our first Ernie Ball prize pack of this stream. So if you are in the chat right now, please listen to UB Jurassic for your instructions on how you can win one of everything that you see, at least one of everything that you see on your screen right now. You're going to get as 2 sets of strings, 1 6-string set for your guitar, 1 4-string set for your bass. You will get a dozen picks from Ernie Ball. You will get 3 Spectrum Plectrum picks from us here at Rocksmith, a black Ernie Ball guitar strap, and a package of Ernie Ball Wonder Wipes and a peg winder to use to help you attach those brand new strings. Once again, these will be shipped out once we are back in the studio. We still do not have an ETA on that time, but we are collecting the information and we'll be sending these out later on. If you're a previous winner and you happen to have moved since you won, or if you have if you will move between now and the time that we ship these out, just let us know so I can update your address. But if you win today, you will get a whisper from Brian Turner. That is UB Jurassic. He will get from you your name, your shipping address, and your telephone number. As always, we need all that information in order to send your prize to you once we are able to ship them out. And once more, I want to thank Ernie Ball for helping us out with these prizes. But right now, it is time to see our special performer guests of the day. It's always a joy to have them. But right now, we have Audrey and Kate with Bohemian Rhapsody. And we'll be back live after that.
Hi, Audrey. Today we chose 2 songs. Kate chose
Bohemian Rhapsody.
by Yep, and I chose Bodies by Drowning Pool. So, why did you choose that song by Queen, Kate?
Because it's fun.
Do you like the bass part?
Oh, yeah.
We always have a lot of fun playing it, nah? It's just a lot of fun. So I just said the same thing. Okay, and I chose Bodies. Do you like Bodies, Kate?
Yes.
Because I really think that Kate's shout goes so well with that song, you know? Don't you think? And I really like the guitar parts too, you know? Both of the songs are our favorite songs, you know? And we have a lot of fun playing them, so that's why we chose it.
Yes.
Yep, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun playing the songs you like on Rocksmith. We'll see you guys again soon then. Bye-bye!
Bye.
Yes, very loud.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see. I'm just a poor boy, I need no sympathy, 'cause I'm easy come, easy go, little high, little low, anywhere
And welcome back to the very brief live portion. I want to say thank you to Audrey and Kate, and Audrey and Kate's mom, who is in the chat right now. And in honor of that performance, today's song pack giveaway is going to be the Queen 2 song pack, which includes Don't Stop Me Now, Love of My Life, Tie Your Mother Down, and We Will Rock You. All of those can be yours if you listen to the instructions from UB Jurassic in the chat right now. Mostly it's typing !raffle, and you must be following the channel in order to win. Good luck to everyone. We are doing 5 copies of the Queen 2 song pack on Steam. So again, if you want one of those, just listen for UB Jurassic's instructions in the chat, and he will get those right over to you. Right now, we've got one more performance from Audrey and Kate with Bodies. After that, we're going to visit Andrew Levin, who's going to talk about effects chain orders. So whether you're playing with a bunch of pedals that you've collected, if you are in an amp modeler, or if you are playing in Rocksmith, playing with the tone designer there, this might offer something for you. So we'll see that right after we say hello to Audrey and Kate one more time. We'll be back right after that.
Same beginning as the last one. Yeah, blast! Huh?
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the.
around here.
Bye bye.
Oh, bye bye.
Hey everyone, it's Andrew, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about the order of effects on a basic pedal board. So a few weeks ago we talked about this on the stream, and I thought it would be cool to look at it, see why this is kind of the standard way to do things, and also just, clear anything up that may not have been clear back then. So I built this mock-up pedal board in my AX8 edit. So the AX8 by Fractal Audio is actually, it's an analog, or not analog, it's a digital piece of outboard gear, but I'm controlling it in the software, and it's just kind of easier to look at and swap around than a pedal board. So I want you to pretend that all of these are like their own little pedals, except for this amp and this cab block. That's like a preamp, and that's a cabinet. So very cool. So generally speaking, the first thing you're going to have is any pitch-based effects. And then I don't have a chorus in this particular chain, a compressor in this particular chain. But usually you'll have pitch before compression. That's so you can kind of squeeze that pitch and make it sound a little tighter, and make all of the, if you're adding an octave below and let's say a third up, for example, if the pitch is a little bit wonky, compressing it a little bit can just kind of make it sound a little bit more cohesive. So that's why I would like to generally put compression after pitch. Then we're going to have our modulation based effects. So that's chorus, phaser. It also includes flanger and filter. Then we're going to have our drives after that. And then we're going to have our delay and our reverb. Now, notice how I put the delay and reverb in between the amp and the cab. That is so that I'm not distorting any delay or any time-based effects. So delay and reverb are both time-based effects. So I'm not distorting that. And I'm about to show you why. So let's go into why this is kind of the standard way that most people will do it. So again, we got pitch-based, then compression, then modulation-based effects, then drive, then time-based effects. So I kind of built this little ultra-distorted patch. So the biggest no-no out of all of that, you can kind of flip those things around, but the biggest no-no generally is putting a time-based effect before drive. So here's how this patch sounds normally, and I'll try and just play the same lick so you can hear the difference. Okay, so kind of a cool little majestic drive sound. Now let's hear what it sounds like if I put the reverb in front of the drive. Boom. What's happening is you have this long reverb tail that's then being overdriven, and so because the reverb is before the drive, now you're actually distorting the reverb. So rather than sounding like you're playing a distorted guitar in a crazy space, you sound like you're distorting the crazy space. So if that's the effect you're going for, there's some weird out there avant-garde stuff, by all means go for it. But generally speaking, especially at a show, if you aren't using a virtual setup like this, really not a good idea to have that be your general basic pedal board setup. Same goes for delay, right? Tone, but if I then distort the delay, as bad, but you're getting distorted delay signal. So rather than, so you're gonna get this as opposed to. So that's generally the way that I like to do things. Let's now listen to the next thing back, which is going to be your modulation based effects. So I'm going to put a phaser on, get a little Van Halen-y type of tone, hopefully. Maybe not Van Halen, whatever, you get the point. That's kind of brown soundy. So this is a phaser, as you can see. I'm going to put this drive over here and see how it sounds. Kind of an interesting tone, but again, generally speaking, if it's a stationary pedal board with analog gear, that's probably not going to be the sound that I'm going to want all the time. It sounds a lot thinner. This. Way more beef there. All right, so finally, we have our pitch-based effects. Now here's this little octaver thing that I did. It's a little much of the reverb. Just a little octaver, and again, this is at the beginning, this is at the end. Now, this is basically acting like I plugged in my guitar, and my guitar is playing two notes. It's playing the note that I have and the octave down below. Now, this would be like distorting the guitar signal before I even play it, and also the tracking isn't going to be as good if I'm distorting the signal before then sending it to the pitch. It's going to be harder for the pedal or program to then interpret what notes I'm playing. So let's see what that sounds like. It's actually not that bad. And how it sounds the quote-unquote correct way. Still stronger, I think. Cool, I like that. Okay, so now the last part, this part is again something you can experiment with, but generally speaking, I would not want for my pitch tracking to be modulated first, right? So remember, pitch tracking is a somewhat CPU intensive thing to do in general, and it's not easy for your technology to then to interpret what notes you're playing. That is a feat of technology. So then to add variables before that, like modulation and drive, is going to kind of mess up the algorithm to do this pitch-based effects in the first place. So let's see what happens if I put a phaser in front of it. So here's with the phaser behind it. Not bad, but if I do this, it actually doesn't sound that much different. Let's see if I move this over here. I think the pitch tracking is pretty good in the AX8. It's slightly clearer. Slightly clearer. I do think it sounds better. Let's see what it sounds like with this chorus. Cool. So that's a really heavy chorus sound. Now let's see what this sounds like. Well, sorry if that's not too convincing, but generally speaking, I do think it's a good idea, again, to put the chorus behind the pitch. Even if it doesn't sound that much different, you're putting a lot more work on the pitch pedal. It's not going to detect it as well. So that's it. That's kind of the basic order of things. Remember, when you plug one thing into another thing, the other thing is going to be affected by whatever it comes before it. So have a nice day, and I will see you, or at least hear from all of y'all soon. Hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, good day.
Hello and welcome back to the live portion of today's Rocksmith Developer Stream. I am still your host and community developer, Douglas Lilly. I want to say thank you very much to Andrew Levin for showing us about effects chains. And thank you once more very much to Audrey and Kate for playing a couple songs for us from Japan today. Well, by today, I mean, they played them a few days ago, but they stream very regularly, so check out Audrey123 Talks on YouTube to see more of that. I'm sure those links will be put in the chat anytime now if they haven't already. They probably have. And right now, I want to say hello once more to our guests. We have with us today Rykin and Shane Gann back on the stream. Welcome back, guys.
What's up, man?
Hello again.
So we were talking a bit about live performances, sort of getting people ready to have their first live shows, or maybe their first maybe small tours we might work our way into if we have some time. Before the break, you mentioned merch. I assume that this question is going to be very much like the question of when someone knows that they're ready to play live, but when do you think a band knows that they're ready to create and try to sell merch?
I think yeah, go for it, Ryan. You first.
You're the merch king though, but I would say that like it helps if you have merch that actually looks cool and people want to wear regardless, even if it's a band. You know, if you have an awesome shirt. So I would say like as soon as you get a cool artist that wants to do stuff for free or whatever, figure out
If you've got enough money to pay your artist.
I think it's never too early to do merch. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Shane?
No, yeah, I totally agree. I think you have to understand that you're selling something that somebody either wants to wear or doesn't.
Yeah.
And you can throw your band name on a T-shirt and try and sell it, but unless it really is like something somebody wants to wear, it's not going to do anything. But it's not super hard to hopefully, kind of like getting the song down. It is obviously challenging, but once you get to that point, it's like, well, let's start printing stuff, see what sells, make sure that we have enough sizes for, start seeing, definitely we should stop selling white shirts. People don't really buy those, or at least at my shows.
Yeah. Like if you're playing in Portland or somewhere cold, have like beanies, and hoodies.
Yeah. That's good call.
Cool hoodie's a cool hoodie. You know what I mean? It's a bonus if it's a cool band that you know.
Yeah. And look,
consider your market, or your fan base. I call it a market because I do think that being a band is a lot like it is a business, and it is worth considering the needs of your customers. And if you're a reggae band, you might have some alternative like memorabilia.
Yeah.
There's things that your community wants that you are better off playing into, and just supplying them with something that they find special about that scene.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
thank you very
totally
much.
Agree.
And speaking of bands being a business, let's talk about what sort of business or government they might be. In your experience, a band that isn't signed, doesn't necessarily have an agent or a manager, that isn't like a friend who's helping them, book shows and whatnot. Who should, in your opinion, should bands work as a democracy, or should there be one person who sort of makes the booking decisions, the merchandise decisions? Should there be a band leader, or should there be a band democracy? Or does that depend on the band?
That's a tough question.
In theory, the democracy is preferred because it's difficult to not only give up that sort of, I don't know what you would call it, but that representation of yourself in regards to the creation that is your band. But it's also, I don't know, it becomes impractical in a lot of senses, booking being one of them. In my band, we started and we all would be like, okay, you call venues and bars from this town to this town, and we all just sort of split it up and tried it that way. And there was really only one of us who wanted to call, and it's such a grind, especially at first. You're just, again, you don't have anything to go off of. You have to have, hopefully you have a whole band of guys who want to do that, but usually people start to specialize pretty quickly.
Gotcha. And is that a thing where it's okay to request that load be shared a bit? If there is just one person making all the calls and fielding all the calls from bookers, is that okay to be like, can someone else please call these 20 venues?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I would say being in that relationship as a band, you better be able to ask for help when you need. Simple as that. And don't hold anything.
I think also it's good to know that being in a band is like being in a family. I mean, you're like intimately like being with these people all the time, and some people are better or like more are better at making phone calls than others. You know, like Shane said about the specialization. So I think there's always going to be, you know, some people that are more into like booking the shows, or the, you know, maybe one guy is more prolific of a writer or something like that. You know, so everybody has different roles, although you do just want to help the team too. You're on the team, so you're trying, you know, you don't want to just have one person be slaving away at calling clubs. If it's over, you know, if they need help, you got to help.
Yeah.
But it is good to recognize that certain people are just, you know, better at certain things just based on their personality. Yeah.
All right, cool.
It's great
now
if you
let's
can just get somebody else to do it that's not in the band, but that's on another level when you get an actual booking agent.
right. That's, and we can skip ahead a little bit to that question. When again, a lot of these I understand are very much, you're going to have to feel it out depending on your circumstances. But what are some signifiers that maybe it is time to start looking for an agent or a manager, or looking at labels? If you want to be associated with a label, which in today's environment you may not want to, with other distribution methods.
Well, I mean, just on an agent alone, like that's a big one, whether you're putting out your own CD or not, because an agent is basically on the phone all day to talent buyers every club. So the agent is trying to sell your band, right? They're like, these guys pack this club. I mean, they're doing great here on the West Coast, you know, whatever their pitch is. Just know that every club has a talent buyer, somebody that's in charge of like booking bands. So obviously, if you're you know, if you're an up and coming band, you're not like on top of the mountain yet. It's you got to have something to sell, I guess. I mean, you have to have a following, I think, or at least it helps. I mean, you could get lucky and have an agent just take you on and put you on like bottom of bills, but usually they're going to want you to deliver, you know, and have a following, and probably like look at all your social media and everything too, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it's agent is a big one, but again, there's talent buyers all around the country that you know, their job is to like look for the best bands. They're trying to get the biggest band in their club,
Right,
to sell tickets. And yeah, it's a good thing to have, but it's a hard thing to get.
right.
Definitely.
Anything you'd like to add, Shane?
That is definitely, I would say the booking agent is, unless you have somebody in your band who really likes to do it, that is a huge help, because the other sort of roles, like you mentioned, management, or I'm not sure if you did, but management is another one of the huge roles, and the label, like you said, is another one of those huge roles. They all kind of fill certain needs that a band has, the booking agent being the one that's trying to get you shows everywhere, and the manager that's just trying to make sure that the ship is steering the right course.
Right. Yeah.
Getting lost at sea. And then the label is, in a lot of ways, just kind of this trust fund. But in a lot of ways, they also help with guidance and promotion, and they have all the connections with manufacturing and advertising, everything.
So they would take care of the minutia that you may not have any interest in, knowledge of, skill at.
Yeah, so I think there's not really a right order, and you might not really know. I guess, you know, for us, it wasn't so much we went looking for things. It was like, hopefully we got to a level and then somebody approached us, or we met a band and they introduced us to their manager or something. And the relationship is more like, if they come to you and it seems like they like what you're doing, then please probably go for it, because the more people you have on your team rooting for you and working for you, even if you do have to sacrifice some of your living out of it, a lot of times, if that's what you're going for, that's absolutely worth it.
Cool.
And a lot of times, if I might add one more thing, at least the way it used to be, is your manager, like your band manager, business manager, whatever, is kind of the one that's really going to push you to like try to get a record deal. You know, he like has your band interest, hopefully in mind, but that's that can be there's bad things, pitfalls about that too. But like a lot of band managers Like at least it used to be common that they would be music attorneys, so they would already have a lot of contacts in, record companies, and they'd be like, putting your product in front of a bunch of different record companies, hopefully to generate interest. And then the whole thing about setting up gigs that the record companies can come and see you at. That's a great showcase for you. So a manager is a great thing to have that's on your team. But like, there's a lot of horror stories about managers signing bands into bad deals. Like you're basically signing away the next 3 albums or X number of years of your life, and just based on like a potential.
Right.
So yeah.
Cool. Not cool, but the answer was cool. The situation, maybe not so much. One more. Does anybody have a hard out at 4, or are we okay to go a couple
I
minutes
can
extra?
go a little over, yeah.
And then the voices in my head. Well, okay. We'll carry forward. So you've played out. Your band's played a few shows live. Maybe you've done some neighboring cities, and you want to go on a small tour. First, is it a good idea to try to get on someone else's tour first, or is it okay to just start maybe doing like a 6 to 10 city tour?
I definitely found more success in riding underneath somebody's wing than completely doing it ourselves, because you'll end up playing rooms that are quite literally empty. We played a show that was just the bartender, the guy who opened the door for us and let us in. That's not really a show.
I've done sound for those shows before.
Exactly.
I've been the only guy in those shows. Yeah.
I hope you loved it.
I did every time. They play. They as long as they play to me. It's
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if there's a band that's done it before, it makes a lot of sense if you have the opportunity to just hop under their wing and let them show you the ropes.
I'd agree, and I'd add that also. It's great. I mean, that's the best way to get fans, I think, is to get with like-minded, like a similar band that you like. Man, if the band likes another band that has a similar sound or whatever, you guys are in the same scene, you're like, man, we got to get in front of their crowd, you know what I mean? And then there's going to be a certain amount of those people that remember you guys, go check you out on whatever social media and start following you as a band. And I think it's really needed. It's pretty hard to just jump out and book your own tour until you get your following going. And the only way to kind of do that I know of, or the best way, is to get on a tour with other bands, or at least if it's not even a tour, just try to play with other bands. If you're just driving out to a city or something like that and driving home the same night, still great. If it's a band, somebody in your scene, you're going to definitely cross-pollinate.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, and I got a few questions I want to hit you with from the chat before we head out. There's a few more than I expected. Okay, Walter D20 asks, how many shows / experience / how big do you need to be before you expect the dollars? I think this we talked about this a little bit earlier. You basically, once you start having a draw, once you start having people that are coming to the venue for you, and you're starting to make money for the venue, that's when you can start expecting money in return.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. You have
merch
to have demand. You need to have the demand first. It's not like you're gonna people are gonna give you money because you're an awesome band, but nobody knows about you.
Moonmaster Z asks, in these days of COVID-19 and the internet, do you think it's been easier or more difficult for bands, and this is probably pure speculation, easier or more difficult for bands to make music and gather a following?
Tough question.
Yeah, I think we have to split it right down the middle. Making music can be easier. Well, I guess both of them, that you have a dark side and a light side. You can really spend this time writing music, just spending that time, you have the time. But at the same time, if you're a band and you're collaborating is really what makes your sound. For example, I'm in 2 bands. One of them is really Shane-centered. I write all of the music and then I bring it to the drummer and we flesh it out. We've been able to write a lot of songs during this time. Hail the Sun, my other act, has written 0 songs because we together the fusion of what we do together is what makes our music. So we kind of can't do that right now. As far as building a following, though, I think it kind of goes both ways as well. You can certainly, there are ways to take advantage of the situation. There are bands starting to do even live shows now. Obviously, digital streaming and some states are open, but there's also it's extremely difficult because if you don't already have a following, who's really out there looking for something new? Unless it shows up in front of them for some reason, like hopefully you're on a playlist or something.
Well, I'm one of those people right now. I'm looking for novelty music. I'm looking for new stuff in Spotify because I'm listening to so much more than I was. I'm consuming so much more right now. I just need always looking for something fresh. Similar question, along the same lines, from Matt Al. He wants to know, how much does social media play a part in expanding your fan base? Is social media the new flyering?
Oh, it's been that for a long time. I mean, I don't think there's no such thing as flyering anymore. That was like in the 80s.
I've been flying in the 2000s.
About 10 years ago, I remember maybe.
I mean, it's you have to have it. I think it's the main way that people find out about stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely you might not be using it to grow, like you're saying. You're the one seeking it out right now. A lot of people are probably in that position. They're the ones looking for new music, but you have to have somewhere for your potential fans to land, and social media is crucial. And if you can make the page sort of fit your whole band's vibe too, and the aesthetic, and you have the things you do have control of, even if you're not the one out there handing flyers out, they're still going to enjoy it once they stumble upon it.
And the good news is it's free.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a big one.
Are there still do street teams still exist? And I guess I'll explain street teams for those that don't know. Bands, usually sort of, smaller to mid-sized bands that had a following, but maybe not national appeal. Maybe had like a fan or a handful of fans in a city that they were going to stop by in a tour. They would contact them ahead of time, send them the flyers, send them supplies, usually, get them into the show. And they would sort of be the person on the ground, bringing awareness to an upcoming show. Is that still a thing that happens as far as you know?
I can think of a band called Dance Gavin Dance that we've toured with pretty extensively, and they're pretty good friends of ours now. They're from Sacramento, and they have a rather large following. And I know we played a show without them. It was our own show in Sacramento, but it was right around the time they released an album. And just outside the venue was their logo and stuff spray painted on the cement on the sidewalk. And you'll see that in a lot of towns, like that sort of stuff still. Yeah, that's technically street team. That's like out there underground promoting.
Right. And then one more question from Matt Al. This one for Shane. The first time that you stage dived?
Both.
Stage dived and crowd surfed. How confident were you that you weren't going to be dropped and that you would make it back to the stage?
I think I was more confident that time than I have been subsequently. I knew, like, I'm not going to do this unless I really, really feel it.
Yeah.
And sometimes since then, it's been like, I think they'll get me. And sometimes that doesn't work out super well. But I've never actually, like, fallen. They always try to support me, even if it's only like 3 or 4 people that stay to help.
So they'll at least break the fall. And
exactly.
Gently let you.
Others will join to get me away from the crowd.
All right. And I think that's just about our time for the day. Before I say goodbye, are there any other pieces of advice that you wanted to give to anybody out there who's thinking about playing live for the first time or thinking about setting up a show for the first time?
I'd say
once we're able to do that,
just get out and do it. Don't trip. It's a learning process. So your first gig's never gonna be like amazing. It's like, there's nothing to do it but to do it.
I think that's very well said. Definitely.
All right.
The more gigs you have under your belt, the better you are. So
yes, stay persistent. Keep at it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for being here, both of you. Raikin, always a pleasure. Shane Gann, very nice to have you on stream that I'm hosting for the first time. So
Great.
welcome back. And we've got your information in the chat so that people can find out where they can get your music.
Oh, cool,
Again,
man.
Raikin has regularly played with the Greg Penn Band, and Shane Gann is a member of Hail the Sun, who is in Rocksmith. You can find in Rocksmith, and also Sufferer. And oh yeah, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Sufferer was a. Is it fair or is it rude to call it a side project?
I don't think it's rude.
Okay, another project, Sufferer.
Yeah.
So I'd asked you if that was. I'd asked you before this meeting if that Sufferer album was a one-off or if that's an ongoing project. And
it was only ever meant to be one album because of how specific the vision was. The album, for those of you who don't know, the Sufferer project centers around anxiety and depression. And the album takes you from the moment a guy wakes up to the end of his day when he falls asleep. And it's 3 vocalists. One is representing him, and the other 2 represent his anxiety and his depression. And that was all I ever thought that this thing would be. One album, one story, one and done. And the response has been too good. And I find myself writing things and I'm like, well, I don't know if that would work for Hail the Sun. So I think Sufferer has to keep going. And now we have a lot of new songs actually in the works.
Nice. That's great to hear. And where can we find them?
Both are available on Spotify and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all the things.
All right.
Yeah. Please.
Thank you both very much. We will see you back very soon. And right now we're going to have our final giveaway for the day. So if you're still in the chat live, please listen to UB Jurassic for your instructions on how you can win our last of the day Ernie Ball prize pack. Once again, we'll be shipping these out once we are back in the studio. Do not know when that will be, but we're saving your information so that when we get back there, we can get these out as quickly as possible. If you win, you're going to receive everything on your screen. 2 sets of strings, a dozen picks from Ernie Ball, 3 picks from us here at Rocksmith, 1 black Ernie Ball guitar strap, a package of Ernie Ball Wonder Wipes to keep your guitar's body, neck, and strings fresh and lasting longer, and a peg winder from Ernie Ball. And sometimes if I happen to have anything else around the office, I might toss that in as well. But there's going to be a lot of packages, so that's less likely than usual. But we'll see. I might have some extras still floating around. But yeah, good luck on that. If you win, you're going to receive a whisper from UB Jurassic. We will ship internationally once we are back in the studio. If you are not in the US, please make sure you break down your address line by line, just so I can easier enter it into the form easier so that it doesn't get lost somewhere out in the world. Thank you again to Andrew Levin for your segment about effects chains. And thank you so much to Audrey and Kate and your family for performing for us today. Great to have you. And thank you to UB Jurassic for moderating the chat, handling the raffles. And thank you to Dan Amrick for being the voice in my head and running this whole stream behind the board of his home. And thank you to all of you for being here. We will see you next week. Bye.